Hello, I'm Hazem Seeker. This is Counting the Cost on Al Jazeera, your weekly look at the world of business and economics. This week, who's killing off the bees? Could the chemicals in pesticides be harmful to wildlife and humans? As the EU ban on harmful chemicals is challenged, we ask, are the big six seed and fertilizer makers killing biodiversity? Also this week, from Russia to Israel, has Iran's nuclear deal with Western powers pushed Saudi Arabia to make new friends? We'll take a look at the deals shaping up. In default, and it's not Greece but Puerto Rico, the US Commonwealth faces up to tough choices on how to pay off its debt mountain. Hedge funds tell it to shut down schools and fire staff. It is not often we talk about mergers and acquisitions, the bread and butter of most business programs. But this really got us thinking. Think about this. A company that controls a quarter of the entire global seed market makes a bid for the world's largest pesticide and fertilizer company. Together, they would control a third of the globe's seeds and pesticides market. Now, unsurprisingly, there is opposition. The company in question is Monsanto. It wants to pay $45 billion to buy Swiss agri-chemicals company Syngenta, who isn't keen on the deal. It's the concentration of ownership that is worrying. 6 American and European companies, Monsanto, Dupont, Syngenta, Dow, Bayer, and BASF, control the entire genetically modified seeds planted in the world. And more than 3 decades ago, there were thousands of seed manufacturers. None controlled more than 1% of the market. Well, seeds aside, a real concern for many is that one of the chemicals in Monsanto's flagship weed killer was, according to the World Health Organization, probably carcinogenic. In various parts of the world, Monsanto's weed killer that contains glyphosate has been banned. In the meantime, the European Union has banned other chemicals known as neonicotinoids in pesticides because they have been linked to serious harm to bees. Now, bees are essential for crops, but pesticides, loss of habitat and disease are bringing down the numbers. Dominic Kane has this report now from Germany.
Erich Güssen works on his farm in western Germany. The summer months are an important time for him. Soon he will have to sow rapeseed in these fields. A key issue for him will be how to maximize his yield and minimize his losses to pests.
You look at how severe the parasite plague is, and then you have the possibility to catch those parasites, or to establish how severe the infestation is, and if you then determine that a damage limit is exceeded, you can fight the parasites.
Large farms like this one near Düsseldorf help provide much of the crops and cereals to the German market. Pest control is crucial, which is why some farmers say the use of pesticides and fungicides is important. If he could, Erich would prefer to use powerful pesticides containing what are called neonicotinoids to protect the growing crop. But in recent years, a ban has been introduced on certain types of neonicotinoid, and others have been examined closely in long-term studies, meaning Erich must do without them.
It is the best option, so you only put the pesticide where you really need it. We sow the rape seeds at the end of August or the beginning of September. It then sprouts and is from the beginning protected against pests.
German farmers talk about using neonicotinoids in the Königsweg, the perfect way, getting the product into the seedling to protect the plant and deal with the pests. But some scientific studies suggest the effect it has on the bees is devastating.
The bees forget where they come from or where they have to go. They are social insects who have to ensure that they are able to return to their population, to the hive to be accurate. They unlearn that under certain circumstances. So in the first instance, we see changes of behavior that you see when there are small doses, and if it's too much, they die.
The agrochemical firm Bayer has manufactured pesticides and fungicides for many years. It rejects the suggestion that neonicotinoids are to blame for falling bee numbers. Recently, it has begun labelling some of its products containing neonicotinoids as being safe for bees. Bayer believes declining bee populations may be caused by a mixture of factors, notably the varroa mite.
Some findings which were made on individual bees or in the laboratory under artificial conditions have suggested some kind of sublethal effects. However, these kind of effects were never found under realistic conditions to affect whole bee colonies in the field. And the protection goal, the entity that we have to protect when it comes to bees, is the bee colony.
But beekeepers and conservationists are not so sure. Melanie von Orloff has tended hives for many years. For her, the importance of a healthy bee population is crucial. She believes neonicotinoids are not the solution for pest control.
There are no real bee-friendly pesticides. All of them have, on some certain issues, they have a sort of effect. And this effect is long-lasting, it takes a while, and even if the bees survive it, it will die sooner or later together with the hive.
The debate over what effect neonicotinoids have on bees has polarized opinion, with many in the farming and agrochemical lobby pitched against conservationists and environmentalists. The one thing all sides of the debate agree on is how vital the bee is to the environment.
One of the most important pollinators are the bees. So we need both. We cannot afford to have bee losses because agriculture needs bees, and agriculture needs also crop protection to control pests. And that's the reason why we need a synthesis. That's the reason why we take a lot of effort to develop bee-safe and bee-friendly products.
Some scientists suggest the honeybee's pollinating effect is worth more than 12 billion euros to the German economy every year, which explains why a long-term decline in the bee population could have a devastating effect.
Right, let's get more on neonicotinoids now. Joining me from Budapest is Yergely Simon. He is the regional toxic expert at Greenpeace. Thank you for being with us. Now, right now, the EU's ban on neonicotinoids is being challenged by chemical makers. What do you think is going to happen here? Will science win out?
Well, I think there is a massive amount of evidence showing the risk of those neonicotinoid substances to pollinators. So I really, I'm almost sure that the EU won't lift the ban. Besides, there is bad signs, like in the UK, where already for oilseed rape there is an emergency derogation application. But I think the scientific evidence is so solid that it really cannot be challenged by the companies.
In the UK, the ban was lifted in a limited way to help some rapeseed farmers who say that nothing else was working to kill off disease. Is there no substitute then?
Well, definitely. We already have seen a couple of studies actually trying to prove that neonicotinoids are harmless. And in some cases, it's turned out that such studies were actually sponsored by the influence companies. The problem is that in Europe, there is a possibility for each member state to apply for a so-called 120 days emergency use derogation. In that case, they can use banned substances for a 120 days period for treatment, for pesticide treatment. Actually, I think there are a couple of alternatives available for oilseed rape. We have seen many other countries could survive easily without, neonicotinoids seed coating.
But isn't the problem the use of older chemicals isn't helping? And this year there is a major bug problem across the continent. There is an expectation that the harvest of rapeseed could be down by as much as 15%.
So far, for other crops, I've heard the same arguments. And for instance, for maize, we haven't seen any decline in maize production. Besides, many farmers and farmers' union told that they wouldn't survive without neonicotinoids, and there will be a massive drop. And of course, in a yearly basis, there are always a kind of differences in the yields. So I wouldn't took so much consequences, from 1 year's results. But on the other hand, there is more and more studies showing that neonicotinoids in their current application do cause a real risk to pollinators, because since they are systemic insecticides, they appear in the whole plant. So if bees and other pollinators collecting nectars and pollen or guttation fluid, they will be in touch with this substance.
Is it worrying to you that some 35 years ago there were thousands of these seed producers, but today there are only 6 that control the entire GM seed market?
Well, it's not only the genetically modified, but the whole seed and agrochemical business seems to be quite danger to the future of our ecosystems and to the environment. Basically, what looks frightening, that basically the world biggest GM owner Monsanto would merge with Syngenta, the world's largest pesticide seller. And we have seen that both companies are selling a lot of highly hazardous pesticides. And in the meantime, Syngenta is kind of infamous for selling pesticide all over the world, which got banned in their own country, in Switzerland and also in the European Union. For the neonicotinoids, it's already almost like 20 years since we know that they mean a risk to pollinators. But we can mention many other substances produced by some of these companies which show a very clear risk to the environment and to human health, and they're still selling it, using it globally.
Yergli Simon, thank you very much. Now, a growing number of countries are considering a ban on glyphosate, which is mostly sold under the name Roundup. The World Health Organization has linked it to cancer. Manufacturers say the science doesn't add up. Manel Fernandez reports now from Sri Lanka, where the chemical is already banned.
Waiting for good news. W.A. Abiratna is hoping his wife's latest medical report will bring some relief. She's one of more than 69,000 people who have been diagnosed with chronic kidney disease, a condition mostly diagnosed in male farmers in north-central Sri Lanka.
The body feels really weak. They say there's no cure, but I have to keep taking medicine.
Her husband, like this group of farmers we spoke to, blames glyphosate, a powerful chemical he used to kill weeds and grasses. Glyphosate was introduced to Sri Lanka by the American biotechnology company Monsanto under the brand name Roundup more than 30 years ago. After its monopoly ended, a number of other companies began making glyphosate, which is used extensively in over 160 countries.
The earth is saturated with Roundup. It's like emptying bowser loads of the total weed killer every year.
The government banned glyphosate in May this year, making Sri Lanka only the second country in the world to do so. The weed killer, made popular by Monsanto, is still available on the black market. We bought this can quite easily. Despite its wide use, researchers say it's not only killing weeds, but humans as well.
Dr. Channa Jayasumana from Sri Lanka's Rajarata University says he believes there is a link between glyphosate and kidney failures in this region.
What we found is, once you use glyphosate in a place where high groundwater hardness is present, there's a possibility of getting complex. That complex is nephrotoxic. But I think Monsanto knew this fact, but they intentionally hide the fact.
Al Jazeera contacted Monsanto regarding the government's ban on the import of glyphosate. The company declined an on-camera interview but released a statement saying, "We are extremely disappointed by this development and believe there is no scientific evidence to justify this decision. This move by the Sri Lankan Regulatory Authority is arbitrary and will deny farmers a key tool to derive higher yields from their fields." With different views on what's causing the disease, people here just want to make sure the products they're using on their farms are safe.
And still ahead on Counting the Cost, how to pay off Puerto Rico's massive debt. Laying off teachers and shutting schools would be a good start, say powerful hedge fund managers. Now, Iran's nuclear deal with Western powers has received at best a lukewarm reception from Gulf states. Saudi Arabia in particular is concerned by the political shift of power in favor of Iran, but it's also worried about the release of more than $100 billion of Iran's funds would allow it to flood the energy market with cheap oil. Now, that could be the reason why Riyadh has been reaching out to new political and economic partners. It signed a $10 billion investment deal with Russia. Both sides don't see eye to eye on Syria. In return, Moscow will help develop nuclear energy. With France, it signed a $13 billion deal for 30 Airbus passenger planes and a feasibility study for 2 nuclear reactors. Plus, with Israel, unconfirmed media reports say Prince Walid bin Talal, one of the world's richest men, is planning to go to Israel to open a dialogue with the Israelis at the request of King Salman. Well, joining me now from Jeddah is Khalid Batarfi, a political analyst and senior columnist at the Saudi Gazette newspaper. Thank you for being with us. So what do you put this sudden flurry of activity from Saudi Arabia down to? Is it a direct result of the nuclear deal with Iran and a fear of a newly insurgent Iran?
No, actually, King Salman, when he was crown prince, he went to China, India, Japan, to the east and west, and he is trying to make a balance that Saudi Arabia is not depending on just one superpower, the United States, or the traditional allies, Britain and France and Germany, and is trying to balance this with other connections and alliances, partnerships with other superpowers and other important countries in the Muslim world also. So he could, balance his act. For example, he made a visit to both India and Pakistan, and usually those are traditionally countries with issues with each other, but still he made this balance. So I believe he's doing the same here in the Arab world by making connections with Hamas as well as with Egypt.
So what do you think is behind the deal with Russia? Relations between the two countries have not been great, particularly over the Syria conflict. Could this also be an attempt perhaps to try and get Russia on side and put greater pressure on Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, who up to now Russia has been supporting?
Yes, this could be a part of it, but Russia is a superpower too. Saudi Arabia needs to balance its relations, as I said, with the rest of the world, and Russia is very important player. Since we reinstated our relation with Russia and had our first embassy with Dr. Abdulaziz Khoja, who was our first ambassador in 1990, Saudi Arabia was reaching out to Russia and China as well. And now I think we need Russia to help us solve problems in the Middle East, and especially in Syria.
With this civilian nuclear deal with France now that we mentioned earlier, there are skeptics out there who doubt that Saudi Arabia, a country heavily reliant on oil revenues, of course, has either the present or future capability to pursue a nuclear program. What do you say to that?
Well, we are talking here about nuclear energy. It's not a nuclear program. And Saudi Arabia has been pursuing this a long time ago. After the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait, we start studying our options, because I just read today that 4 million barrels a day out of 10 million barrels in Saudi Arabia, Saudi production of oil is used internally and locally. That's a very dangerous trend, and if this continues, we might reach a day when we don't have much to export.
Would you give any credence to some Israeli media accounts that are saying, they're talking about a possible visit by Prince Walid bin Talal to Israel? Is it just a trial balloon, or might that actually happen one day?
He went to Jerusalem before, but not to Israel. And he has some projects in in the Palestinian land, the Palestinian states, and this is not a secret. Now they are talking about visit to Israel. I doubt that.
How do you perceive it more generally than the overall policy of Saudi Arabia in all of this?
It's a continuation of what he started when he was crown prince. As I said, he is of the idea that we should balance our relations with the world. We should not be dependent on the United States or our traditional allies. We should depend on ourselves, but also have partners everywhere, east and west. And then when there is a deal, we should have the best deal. In the past, for example, we would have bought our airplanes from only Boeing, because we have a very strong relation with the with America in general and with American companies in particular. Today, we just saw the airlines announce 50 airplanes from Airbus. So that's just an example of how he view the world and how he view the foreign relations, so the foreign relation with the world. Just recently, a couple of months ago, we opened our stock market to foreigners from all over. It's not particular, there is no exclusive rights to certain countries, but it's open to the whole world. I believe that's his strategy, that's his vision, and I believe it's working so far.
Khaled Batarfi in Jeddah, thanks for being with us.
You are most welcome, sir.
Well, Puerto Rico missed a repayment on some of its debts, pushing the U.S. territory to its first default. A decade-long economic stagnation has crippled its finances. Its economic troubles have forced thousands to emigrate to the U.S. mainland. Now, a group of hedge funds is telling Puerto Rico to fire teachers, close schools, and cut health spending to meet its debt obligations. Andy Gallagher has this from San Juan.
At the elementary school in Guaynabo, just outside the capital San Juan, staff are getting ready for pupils to start a new school year. But educators in Puerto Rico have never faced an academic challenge like this before. The island is in massive debt, schools are merging, and teachers' pensions are in real danger of being wiped out. Like many teachers here, Monica Cruz has real concerns about her pupils, her school, and her own family's security.
I have to take care of my debts too, because I have to pay house, I have to pay my bills, so it's going to be for me a big problem. I don't know what I'm going to do, really. Honestly, I have no idea.
But a report from a group of hedge funds who own much of the island's debt claims the government is overspending on education and needs to close more schools and lay off more teachers. It's a solution that won't find many supporters here. In the last year alone here, over 100 schools have closed their doors, partly because so many people have left for the United States. But across this island there is now a sense of impending doom and uncertainty that all the cuts and job losses that people have talked about for so long are finally about to bite. For Puerto Rico's health services too, a crisis is looming. More than half the population relies on federally funded medical programs that are facing big cuts.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, you?
And already overworked doctors predict things will only get worse.
I was happy with 25, 30 patients a day practice. We're up to 70, 75 patients a day. I mean, and I'm not getting any younger. You know, I don't know if I'm going to be physically able to maintain such a high volume practice.
Dr. Johnny Rulian is fighting against the proposed budget cuts, but he says the effects of a deep economic crisis and reduced funding are already being felt.
Everybody's cutting corners. Hospitals get paid 25% less. You only have 2 nurses per floor instead of a nurse for every 4 patients. You go to a doctor's room and there's 40 people waiting when you get there. Now there's not going to be any more transportation support.
It's estimated that almost half the population here lives in poverty. But if health services and schools are hit as hard as some predict, they could be about to get a lot poorer.
And that is our show for this week. But there's more for you online, of course, at aljazeera.com/CTC. That'll take you straight to our page, which has individual reports, links, and entire episodes for you to catch up on. That is it for this edition of Counting the Cost. I'm Hazem Seeker from the whole team. Thanks for joining us. The news on Al Jazeera is next.